I'm E.
I'm Rob.
I'm Algernon Cornelius.
And I'm CLYDE.
Welcome to the next movement, folks.
We on fire tonight. Anything in our sight, we gon' set it alight. They want war, alright. Everything that I bleed, I can kick in a rhyme. Finger on the trigger, war warning. Stick 'em up while they drawing. Who you be, who you with, how you get it all together in sync. New team, who this? New theme for the flick. New sheen on my shit. Who dreams them spin, rim shot, go slow, let 'em in, play it off an instinct. No, it ain't what you think, no doubt. Know what I'm saying? No? Know what I'm saying? No? It was a party night and the fakest was faking and the liars were screaming and the fakest was faking and it won't be long till everybody knows that we gon' keep it real. Know what I'm saying? We gon' keep it real. Know what I'm saying? We gon' keep it real. Yo.
Algernon Cornelius and CLYDE, thank you so much for coming through. We appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So you all just released a new project called Stick a Fork in It.
Yep.
Yeah.
Algernon on the rhymes, CLYDE on the beats. It's an amazing project. Highly encourage folks to check it out. So let's start at the very beginning. The first song is called Fire Emoji, and it sounds exactly how it's described. Algernon, you come on the track with a lot of energy, and you carry it throughout the song's entirety. And I think the production really matches this energy. And at some points, it sounds like you have a whole crowd back in your delivery and chiming in with their own. So what motivated the approach that you took on Fire Emoji? Verse wise and energy wise around that, and also production. And did it feel important for y'all to place the song at the beginning of the album?
I mean, like the whole thing started when CLYDE sent me like a batch of beats, which he's done several times, like over the past how many years we've known each other.
Probably 6 or 7, maybe.
Yeah. I think like I went in pretty hard in a very, I guess, like introspective kind of way with those lyrics, like all the way through those beats. But it felt like maybe, I think because Lemons was the first one in that run. And I was like, I don't know if this is like the first thing that needs to hit. And then I think there was a couple of Lucy's in another pack. And that was the one that ended up being Fire Emoji because that guitar riff just like sent me insane. I was like, it's got to be this one to start with. So yeah, like Fire Emoji and the last song, they were kind of like Lucy's that bookended the whole record as like an intro and outro. That definitely needed that kind of energy to bring it in and bring it back out again, I think. My live shows tend to be quite lively anyway, so I think like
For real.
Yeah.
This dude live is, you meet him in person, he's the nicest, sweetest guy ever, but on a stage it's different.
It would be very tiring being like that every day.
Yeah.
I imagine so.
Yeah, but like that Fire Emoji, I think I'm like a massive Beastie Boys fan, and that doesn't always sit right with certain hip hop fans, I think. But like, I think because of my age, it's like I'm a De La Soul baby, and I think all those sort of groups, they grew up on like this sort of routines era of hip hop and, you know, the kind of like singing a hook and all that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot of kind of sort of nods to that in there. Yeah, like the chanting and stuff like that. That is sort of a direct Beastie Boys kind of like nod in there.
I want to zoom out a little bit because before we even get to the first track, there's the album cover, right?
Mhm.
I just wanted to ask about the significance of the photo on the album cover.
Like CLYDE, like the jungle stuff that CLYDE produces, like it's insane, by the way. If anybody hasn't checked it out, definitely do that. And I think it was kind of coming off the back of that, like there was a lot of car imagery involved with that. So I felt that kind of like felt like a good sort of bridge, I think, from the stuff that you were doing into the stuff that I was doing. But like I think I was trying to look for like something that would work as an album cover for ages, and nothing was coming up. And then I'd been to Jamaica early on this year to see family. I took like loads of photos on 35mm film. And that was just like a random one of this car that was just sitting there. And I didn't even think it would turn out that great. But then like when I looked at it, I was like, I think this is it.
Yeah,
I think that's happened with every
it's
single
got
album cover I've done. It's just like that's the one now. Yeah.
Hmm.
You can't really force or pick something.
I really like it because it's simple,
Yeah.
but there's like an elegance in that.
Yeah, I think you could try and overthink something or try and illustrate something that, is about all the content of what's in there. But yeah, I like the simplicity of it is what I think drew me to it as well. I guess
Yeah.
like, stick a fork in it is like, the gear shift, the fork in the road, that kind of like came afterwards. So yeah.
I was curious about that, and it brings me to my next question. So you did an interview a couple years ago, and during that conversation, you're talking about your writing style and format. And at one point in that conversation, you said that you had gotten back into physically writing in books because it's different energy to sitting in front of a screen or phone, and it's more automatic because you don't stop to think about how a word looks or edit as much. The process tends to be more natural. And I can feel that same sentiment when I think about Stick a Fork in It, that title. Those
Mm.
words almost read like a piece of advice. Don't overthink it and get caught up in the things that stop you from getting the work done. Just get the work done.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's a
yeah.
conversation you've had to have with yourself when you're creating music.
Yeah. I think so. I think like especially with this, because the title really came from Clyde because I was trying to overcomplicate it with the title. I think I overcomplicate things sometimes. I was
Mhm.
just like asked him like what is it? And you pulled that out as a lyric from DIA. And I was like, yeah, it is so simple that kind of works. As well, this was the kind of case with this project where it did force me into trying to be more simplistic and have more brevity, I think, with the approach. And especially as I was writing towards the end of it, I did start going more into the lyric books, writing by hand. Like Baby Bro, DIA, Pluto were all handwritten. And I feel like those were the strongest ones as well. Like I could sort of feel the natural kind of rawness coming out in that.
Yeah, DIA best track on the record easily for me. That sort of just stands in. I feel like you could listen to that track 20 years ago or in 20 years and it would still hit the same, at least for me anyway.
Yeah. I think I'm always trying to find that. I think because I write chronologically as well, I always have the sequence of the album and then write from the beginning to the end because I think that way a listener is going to go through the same thing that you go through. And that felt like I'd reached something by that point. And like that beat was just, yeah, it was like the perfect kind of platform to say what I needed to say on that.
Clyde, for you, what was it about Stick a Fork in It that you felt like was the right title?
I don't know, it comes from definitely my favorite track and I was just listening and re-listening and re-listening and that like as I learned the lyrics, that was the one that just really jumped out at me and it sort of also has the dual meaning of, something's done, sticking a fork in it, it's done. And I felt like we were not struggling to wrap up with art and a title and stuff like this, but we were searching, and that just I don't know it hit, and we both sort of instantaneously agreed that this is what it should be.
I kind of like that. It sounds like it was both about the process that you were going through to finish the record, but also,
Yeah.
the album itself.
Yeah, I feel like you can really add pressure to yourself when you're thinking about like the how your product or your record's going to look when it's out. Like how does the title match the artwork? Does it match the vibes and the music? And I feel that like that organically came from the music, so it is the album for me.
Algernon, in one of your Instagram posts about Stick a Fork in It, you compared the process of making this project to a reoccurring dream when you're in a house that you once lived in and keep discovering new rooms that you didn't know existed. I'm wondering what you think it was about this project that sent you into old familiar spaces only to discover something new or forgotten.
I think honestly, it's just probably the age that I'm at. I think I'm always really bad for like going back and revisiting things over and over and trying to like think how I could have done things better. That's probably where that anxiety dream comes from, maybe. But I think like when you hit your mid-30s, you have this weird perspective sense, and it's quite calming in a way, I guess. So you're able to kind of like write about things with that perspective, that sort of distance, I think. And that's definitely what it felt like with this process.
In that same post, you described the process of having to sort through these old familiar things, and you acknowledged some of them you wanted to like dig out and bathe in sunlight, while others needed to sort of remain in the past. Wondering if you could describe some of the things that you found that needed sunlight.
That's still hard to pin down, I think. Like I feel like because I went through so much like writing that stuff. And like I think the way I kind of write is a bit patchworky as well. It's like lots of little snippets and glistens of things. I think kind of just sort of being a bit more in tune with yourself and how you want to be and how you want to move through the world and how you relate to other people. I think that should be bathed in sunlight more. I think like being more comfortable with yourself. And then the other things I kind of wanted to bury were like stuff. I guess like I've focused quite a lot on grief in my work, definitely the past few records. And that stuff never leaves you, but it's just putting it in a place where it can be buried but not forgotten in a way. Like something that you don't need to keep dragging out of the ground and reanimating every time. It's like, well, that belongs on the other side now. It doesn't need to be a zombie in that kind of way.
Started to talk about CLYDE's production outside of Stick a Fork in It. And for me, when I tapped into this other work, it feels like the production intertwines vintage sounds from different eras with modern
Hmm.
production in a really unique way. And CLYDE, when I think about your work, like the analogy that comes to my mind is a renovated house that still has the bones of its original structure. Is that something that resonates with you? And Algernon, I'm wondering if that's something that you've noticed about CLYDE's production and appreciated it.
Growing up, my favorite music has always been like the dusty, raw, like off-kilter sounding music, which I feel like you either get or you don't, if you know what I mean. And that's something that I don't search for genres or sounds. Like if a sound, like if I click with a sound, then it's got to get used. Like it doesn't matter if it's clean or I sort of tried to go with that guiding light or whatever. And I suppose that's just over the years I've honed it in a bit more to skip genres from jungle to whatever, and it still sound like me.
You've got this texture that I'm really drawn to. And I think is like when you're a producer, is you, like you say, you're just going for the sound. Like it might even be like the chord voicing of something or particular melody. And I think
Mhm.
maybe rappers are drawn to the texture. I guess I'm only speaking for myself, but like, yeah, it's kind of like I liked the analogy of like a type of house, but like I think of it sometimes as like clothing. It's like what textures you want to have on you, like that kind of thing.
I started to think about it as like old home videos, where like,
Mm.
mostly the end parts or like where the film starts to repeat or stutter, and you just get like quick glimpses of the past. It's easy to see how all the things that we're saying though lead to the kind of like introspection that you seem to find yourself engaging in. Your vocals on this project have a distinct sound. I don't know if it's just the mic setup that you use to record them, or if what I hear at times is an effect or what, but they almost sound like they were taken from a live performance, especially on track like Fathers. where there's also crowd noise added to the production. Of course, there's Hausu, where your vocals are pitched down. Can you guys talk about the decision that went into the distinct vocal sounds on this project?
Or like crowd noise on Fathers, that's from your sample in there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like CLYDE had sent me these beats and then I demoed them like just with it's like a fake SM58 that I've got. And I just like shoved it through a preamp and then like there's a couple of settings I have on Ableton, but it was like not really much added to it. And then like what I usually do is I do demos and then I go in the studio with Joe Clayton, who's got a studio in Salford called No Studio, and then we sort of re-record stuff and like he just does magic where make it sit right in the mix and like make it proper. But I think like because certain songs, it was about the delivery I did in the moment in those demos. So then we actually used a lot of the demo takes that I did, but then he put them through certain processes to make them sit a bit more in the mix. But it really is just like I guess a mic you would use for a live rendition. And then, yeah, so it's got that raw feel to it. Like Zach De La Roca from Rage Against the Machine, I think he uses the same SM58 he's always used since the first album and like refuses to use anything else. So yeah, if it works, then just stick with it, I think.
There are times when this album feels like a 90s mixtape to me. And I say 90s because of the references to albums and cultural moments that I hear, specifically from this era. It feels like you're honoring a time in hip hop that is sacred to you all. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I think like CLYDE, what do you like? What was your kind of way into
I
it?
mean, I grew up on 90s hip hop from like a really early age, so it's something that's at this point just subconsciously always going for me. And that just the sample selection from that era is something that is just way better than anything else, in my opinion. And I know we're sort of coming back to it now, but that when I sort of I mean, I'd done all the beats for this album in like in one sitting, essentially. So what I sent to Marcus was just one full track. So that's sort of like the key to keeping them in the same vein. And I suppose like the first beat would have been something that was like crusty and raw and proper, just simple loops. And yeah, just went from there, I think.
I think you can tell certain rappers' age by the references they have. Like
Yeah,
definitely.
really.
And like yeah, I'm not that old, but still like we had dial-up and all these things we remember a
We had
time we were
dialogue.
conscious before the internet and social media. So it's just yeah, it's a different level of reference, I think.
For sure. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all are gonna have to help me with the title of this track. Algernon, you said it earlier, but I can't remember how it goes. Is it BB Bro? Like how
Baby bro.
Baby Bro? Baby
I
Bro.
like the
Okay.
fact that nobody can say it right because that means, there's
Yeah.
scope there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you know, you know. Okay. Baby Bro. Got it. Very unique way to write that. I appreciate it. But so y'all have a music video for this, and I really appreciated just some of the footage you have on here, especially when you're underwater. You end this track by saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong if I get any of the lyrics incorrect. Time will flutter by like it's nothing, like before you have a chance to know who you be. I'm wondering, Algernon, has making this album and making music in general helped you discover more about yourself as not just an artist, but also a person?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's the technology you use to interpret the world around you. It's like, I guess some people maybe they don't have that, and I don't know what that's like. That would be crazy if I could experience that. But like, I think it's the in between bit. You have all this stuff out here, and you're here, and then you need to have a relationship with the world, and the music is the thing in between. And people look at it and then they think, oh, that's art. but it is your way of like sort of unraveling this tether that's between you and the world, I think. And like the things I wouldn't say to friends or family, I can then put into music and it's there. And it's like I don't have to write an essay about it or, you know, have a little speech. It's just the music is what it is.
Yeah, on that note, there are definitely some moments of vulnerability throughout this project. I'm thinking of tracks like Lemons and Pluto and Mud. You seem to be revealing a lot. I'm just going to read some of the lyrics that stood out to me. When I hug you, I can feel the heaviness. 2 cards hold the whole house up. And it was hard for me because I come from a background of silence, like cosmic radiation, hear the static when I'm buzzing. And maybe most of all, channel all the spirits of my dead friends I can't forget. Fact is, that's a lie, because I try my best to ignore all these feelings not ready to be explored. How did you know when enough was enough? Like I'm being open and raw enough.
I think like when I was writing my last album, Segundo, because like conceptually, I think like the first album I did, Miraculous Weapons, that was like really personal. And I was like, oh, I won't do that again. I'll try and be like more like I wanted the beats to be like really straight to the point, and I wanted the lyrics to be more like an atmosphere tone sort of thing. And that was quite hard still. And then I think as I was finishing off the album, I did the song December 25th, and that was like the most personal thing I've ever written. And then I think that's when I started going back to these CLYDE beats, and I was like, right, I think that's where I want to go with this direction. So I think it was just being in a state where I was like, I don't know if like people, I think there's something people connect to the music, but I don't know if they're like connecting to me in a way. And then I think, yeah, through December 25th, it was like more people connected to it, because even though I'm saying the most personal things that no one, only my family would understand certain references, I think when you are that person and vulnerable, people know that's what you're doing, and then they find that in themselves, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Like on Mud, there's like references that only people who came from my town, if they were like went to my school, would get those references. So it's kind of for them, kind of, yeah.
All my ashes I keep between my fingers. I'm alright to be different. Little wishes. Made the wrong decisions nearly half of the time. A rhyme's a rhyme, those lies are mine. Every day I wake up panicking, mask on, sounding out of breath like Anakin. Slippy road, 857 when I'm peeking. Freak in the mirror when I stare back tweaking. Know I gotta count my steps, no rest for the best. Sit my ass down when it's time to get my head in check. Channel all the spirits of the dead friends I can't forget. Fact is, that's a lie, cause I've tried my best to ignore all these feelings not ready to be explored. Denial on trial, quite a while since I thought about the fog. A cloud thicker than the bog, and it now keeps running to the devil, there's no med for me. Bedwritten soul still numb from the atrophy. I've lost uncharted, when it started I just stopped thinking about it. No, I can't stop thinking about it. I'd rather think about the time when he was 6. Seemed simple when we were 7. Ate a Pizza Hut when we were 9. Now I'm thinking, well, we never kept in touch all of this time.
As far as the process of like putting things together, was there much conversation between the two of you, you and CLYDE, about lyrics?
Not really, no. I send stuff to you, like just to see what you think, and like if it's to get the go ahead, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly trust his process and his music and his output. So it's just, I feel like whatever we make, I'm gonna enjoy it, whether it's for like releasing or just for listening to ourselves. So yeah, I always trust this dude. You can always trust this dude. He's trustworthy.
I always worry that like, because I like when I make beats and I send them to somebody, I'm like, oh, what if they send something back that I
You
don't
go,
like or
yeah.
like deeply offends me,
Hmm.
which hasn't happened. But yeah, so you've always got to check.
That shit does happen though.
It
I
does
don't trust it.
happen.
I don't trust everyone like I trust you. But yeah, I've definitely had a
Yeah,
few tracks sent back, and I'm like, I can't back this in any way, shape, or form.
damn.
How have you handled that?
I'm straightforward with it. I mean, if someone wanted to buy the beat off me, then I suppose that's different. But I wouldn't collaborate with someone on something that I'm not totally happy with. Like, I feel that in the long run, for your sanity and your mental health, it's not worth it.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the British hip hop scene, which I'm trying to be more intentional in my learning about, you know, what it all entails and the history of it. So, Algernon, just to clarify, you live in Manchester now and formerly lived in Leeds. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And Clyde, where are you in England?
I'm in like the southeast, so Norwich is the place I'm at, but it's like deep countryside around here, so there's not a lot in terms of like a hip hop community, really.
Okay. Algernon, you kind of spoke to this a little bit ago, but I was wondering if you all are intentional with, representing the spirit of your communities, including the hip hop scenes that you hail from, so that people have a sense of it and what it means to you in your music.
Yeah. I think maybe this is where we have a similar thing of I grew up in like North Yorkshire, which is like super country as well.
Hmm.
And there's no culture there apart from farming and like steam engines. That's it. Fox hunting as well is a major thing, sadly. But yeah, so like everything culture-wise was in the cities,
Mm.
and I didn't really experience all that kind of community stuff on a bigger level, I think, until like I came to Leeds and then Manchester. And I think it wasn't even because I think the hip hop scene, even in Leeds, the hip hop scene in each city is so small that it can't really sustain itself really as
Mm.
one big community. So like I was in with like the DIY like noise rock scene and like sort of weird art scene and all that kind of stuff. So that felt more like my community, these different pockets. And then like we met through Phil, who did This City Is Ours, a record label in
Shout out
Manchester.
Phil.
Yeah. He's been really instrumental for us like early on, like was putting on shows that were kind of, I guess they were inspired by Low End Theory.
Yeah,
Because he'd been over there a few times. So it was like producers showcasing beats and playing in front of each other. And that's kind of what got me really driven into making all of this that I do now and like how we met. Um, so yeah, like I think that thread always comes back and like the whole UK is so small. It's like everybody knows each other. So, you know, it kind of already does feel like a weird community in a way.
It sounds like from what you're saying, it's not a community that is always like connected.
No,
Yeah.
I feel like if you came to Manchester and you were like, what is the Manchester music scene? Like it would change from person to person because like you could have a whole universe of stuff that is nobody else knows about. Like everybody's kind of in these pockets, but I think I do fairly well in like trying to maneuver around all these different things, and I can see where there are connections that people might not know each other, but they
Mhm.
definitely should and should
Yeah.
be making stuff together. And like, I think that's something I want to pursue more is like connecting people up. Because especially at the moment, I think this is maybe the most like the best time for people making rap music in the UK where it's so diverse. Like I
mhm.
think before it was people being either super traditional, like making stuff that would have been considered backpack rap, and
Mhm.
then you had like grime, and it was just those two, like
Yeah.
little dichotomy. And now like people are making all sorts of stuff, and it's like the radio doesn't reflect that. It's, you know, but I think if you look around, there's so much to pick. It's crazy.
Have you all been able to make connections and establish community with folks in hip hop scenes outside of Britain? So, like in America or other countries?
I mean, I released through a label in LA, so I sort of have a few connections out there, and I've spent a little bit of time out there and played shows and that. And it's definitely like, I feel just having those, wider connections, whether it be on laptop or whatever, has really like enriched my, I don't know, I suppose a drive to create it. Because like Marcus says, when you're in places like we are in the UK, which is so just out on a limb, you feel like you're just releasing it to no one. But having, I suppose, like the connection in the UK hip hop scene is mostly online, I'd say,
Mm.
unless you're in like London or Manchester or like Bristol or something like that.
I would say like probably because of the type of hip hop music we make, we probably have more connections in the US just through like
Mm.
people that we've linked with. And like you've played in LA before, like I don't know if this is true technically, but I've been spreading the rumor that you introduced Thundercat to jungle music because you played in front.
Well, he
Which,
was, yeah, I mean, he was dancing to jungle when I played it. So I will take
if
that. I'll take that as a fact.
if we hear full on jungle breakdowns on the next record, that's because of you.
Yeah, you know where it came from.
In the press release for this project, it mentions possibly illegal beat battles in the back streets of Salford. So I'm just curious, and to be clear, we're not saying that you participated in these illegal battles in any way, but from what you know, what do these illegal battles look like, and what makes them illegal?
People died.
Oh shit!
Horribly died,
Yeah.
but those are just rumors, which we don't like to talk
Yeah, we
about.
don't want to implement ourselves in
No.
beat murder. But yeah, that's like that was Phil what we were saying. Phil put on all these shows in Salford at the Eagle Inn, and that's kind of where we connected with people. And I think there's been, I guess, because you spend so much time at home in your little dungeon just making these beats on your laptop. And for like majority of people, you don't get to hear them on a sound system. So like I think for a lot of us, that was like the first chance to kind of like, oh,
Mhm.
there's too much bass in my mix.
Yeah,
I need to scoop
for
that
real.
out.
For real.
Yeah.
Sound checking and realizing that your beat sounds horrible.
Yeah. But like that's yeah, it's kind of like an open exhibition. It's like you're listening to other people and you're like, oh, you do that differently. That's interesting. And like showing you other possibilities that you didn't know. And yeah, like you were saying before, it's like being part of a community, I think, definitely. I would like to have a really hardcore competitive beat battle though, like because
Yeah.
I've not done that.
Yeah, beat battles have been, that's where I got connected with this label in Los Angeles, was through the old Stones Throw beat battles that they used to do on their they had a forum page on their website. I used to do them, and that like I made a lot of connections through that,
Mm.
definitely. So I think it's, when it comes to beat battles, it's not really, I suppose it might have 5% of competition in there, but only because you're proud of your work, if you know what I mean. I suppose it's, yeah, it can really serve its purpose and develop things quicker than if you were to just release on SoundCloud or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there needs to be like a word for this thing that's like competitive, but it's also like
Community driven, like,
generative.
yeah,
Yeah, because I think that's like what hip hop is. It's like it's not competitive in this like bad way. It like actually it creates new
yeah. It's like
pathways.
pushing, yeah,
Yeah.
I always see it as like this opportunity to like, sharpen your sword,
Yeah.
right? Like, and there's definitely community in that, but it's not just like, oh, fuck this person, we're gonna go up against them. There's more to it than that,
Mhm.
and everybody benefits from it.
Definitely. Like
for
the
real.
first time I saw Clyde play, like I went home immediately and started making beats because I was like, I need to sharpen the sword. Like, yeah.
For real.
So we talked about the first track on the new album. So now let's talk about the last. So Stick a Fork in It ends with the song Fathers. And there are a few lines in the track that really stood out to me when I listened to it for the first time. Algernon, you say, Doom, R.I.P., pay dimes for his rhymes. They only care when you die, care when they making money off your shine. How have examples like the one you're giving us here made you all think about how you want to protect your art and share it with other people?
That is, it's really hard because everything's moving so fast and at like a terrifying rate, especially with AI. And you're like, I don't want to hear a deep fake of myself. Um, like even the past week, I've just been thinking more about digital footprint and like, oh, I should maybe stop liking stuff on social media because that's just like it's building up this
Yeah.
account of you
Yeah.
and sort of you're thinking about the ghost that's going to echo on after you die, and that's the thing that's going to haunt you and everybody else. So yeah, it's a tricky one, and I especially reading a few books about like rappers and producers and how like their estates were handled after they died, and it just sounds like horrible, like really depressing. Um, yeah, and it makes you want to crawl back in a hole, like, nope, not going to give it to anybody. But I think maybe there's a way that you could kind of, I think there needs to be basically a big cultural switch where people have a deeper connection to music and want to protect it as this sacred thing rather than just like a piece of content to just be like, you know, reused over and over again. Like what a lot of these big venture capitalist companies are doing, like buying up huge catalogs of publishing just so they can like throw it in movies for sinks and just like make all that money back. It's just they see it as like a property portfolio. Yeah, I don't know how you solve that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think on this trajectory, I don't know if there is a way to solve that. Like, I don't think when I'm not going to say you're serious about your art, but you're like invested in the process. I don't, at least for me, I like legacy is not like anything that's at the forefront of my mind or a concern, if you know what I mean. And you can definitely see that. I mean, that's clearly the same for a lot of other people who are past who, as Marcus said, we've seen their estates just completely get mishandled and family members mistreated. And, you know, so I feel like in some regards, you're always going to lose when you make art, if you know what I mean, especially if you're putting it out to people and you're releasing it. Like, it's not, once you release it, it's not yours anymore, is how I try to see it. So I try not to be too personally attached to it when it's gone. But yeah, it's just such a tricky path to walk that I feel like I say, you're always going to lose somehow. Someone's always going to lose out, whether it be in integrity or money or ownership or whatever, you know.
I think maybe that's kind of what I was thinking of a cultural shift. And maybe it's like an environmental one or tied to that, where it's like seeing you're not this individual selfish thing, like you're tied to the earth and everything around you. Like it's not just you, it's everything.
Yeah,
but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can be exploited or you can exploit the resources of the earth. And I think, yeah, it's trying to get out of this kind of individual, it's mine, no one else's. In reality, it belongs to everybody. At the same time, not everybody can just like strip it for parts and exploit it.
Right, there's boundaries with that.
Yeah.
My knees hurt when I grow. And that's a tough pill to swallow. Because I'm not getting taller. Please, is there anywhere I could grow? Please. My knees hurt when I grow. And that's a tough Cause I'm not getting tired. Please, is there any way I could grow? Please. Take that, take that, take that, take that. Take my baby, baby, just take that. She said we don't accept the swipey kind. I think these niggas might be lying. We ain't up to speed on that. No, we ain't got the green like that. Oh, my signature don't match on that. I did that when snapbacks came back. Lost in the tip. There's things I ain't rolling with. Things I ain't knowing yet. Things I ain't growing in.
Oh, don't worry, you gon' grow into those, baby.
We don't want mine, but they give me if I ain't knowing.
Just try them out. Just put them on.
I ain't all this time. I don't think I'm growing anymore.
So every episode, we spend the second half of the show talking about an album chosen by our guests. It's an album that has had an impact on their life and typically their art as well. And we are talking about By the Time I Get to Phoenix by Injury Reserve today. So tell us why we're talking about this album.
I mean, I had a lot of albums I could have picked. I think there was like J-Lib, Champion Sound, there's Most Def, Ecstatic, and I kind of did get a little bit scared because I thought people would rinse me if I got anything wrong about those records because they're so sacred. But like, by the time I get to Phoenix, it's like a contemporary one that I think is like a cultural reset. Like, I don't like saying instant classic, but to me, it felt like an instant classic.
Some things are just an instant classic.
Yeah, you can say
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And I think for several reasons, but it brings it back to basics in a way. I think because of how this album was sort of came about. I think if I'm right, it was through a DJ set that they did when a gig went wrong. And I think Parker was just playing like tracks that they had on the CDJs and messing about with them, manipulating them. I think Richie was improvising vocals, and really that's like the essence of hip hop, isn't it? It's like that's what it was. It's a DJ, somebody improvising on top. So like to then have an album that sounds so futuristic, but it's come from the elemental process, like, is really interesting to me. Yeah, like I think I like the sample choices on this are so crazy as well, because like
for real, some crazy samples on this, things you would just never, I suppose, sat at Ableton yourself, you would never dream of like using, if you know what I mean. Like,
no,
yeah,
I guess there's certain things. I think maybe August Fanon was talking about this on the last podcast about certain samples you don't touch because it's maybe
sacred.
Maybe that's yeah. But there's some choices like that on this where it's like the Brian Eno sample.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite songs of all time. And then when I heard that they sampled that, I was like, I can't believe you did that. But I was like, oh, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's like perfect, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe like this is a good record for showing that if you're sampling, nothing should be out of the realms of being used. Like you say, they're definitely sacred samples, but I still think that maybe privately, they're worth going at, and I feel like this record is like a real inspirer of that process.
Like, I think you definitely need the audacity, and I think sometimes
audacity,
double entendre, but like I think you can get too stuck in like I need the most obscure thing that no one's ever heard, and this it's like, do you know what? So what times you need to flip this and that, works.
Yeah, just try and give it your light because we all see things differently.
Yeah. Algernon, you were talking about, you said sort of like them going back to the basics and sort of, for me, like also back to a different time in hip hop, like closer to the beginning of it as we know it. And I've never heard them confirm this, but I'm assuming by the time I get to Phoenix is a nod to Public Enemy by the time I get to Arizona. And that makes so much sense for me because there are so many layers in
Yeah.
this album, like so many different genres, so many different just sounds like in one given track. It's insane.
Yeah. Like I think if I remember rightly, it was Groggs who came up with that title because of how many times by the time I get to Arizona has been flipped, I think, by different artists, like doing
Mm.
different versions of it, like Isaac Hayes
Isaac
being the
Hayes, yeah.
most famous. And obviously they're from Arizona. And yeah, I guess that's the same level as well of like how many times can you flip this
Yeah.
and like keep it fresh and your new spin on it. Like some of these like tracks, like Outside, like the first track, I think that's pretty much just like a raw. That might not even be looped. I think it's just like a whole, they took the whole song there and like, yeah, like added some glitches and stuff, but it works so well. And again, that brings it back to the elements of like when you didn't know how to loop stuff, it's like you were finding instrumentals, like even like those Ghostface songs that I loved when I was a teenager. It was like Vidal's where they're singing over the top and he was just rapping on top. He's like, I don't care if they're
Mm.
singing, I'm gonna rap over it.
Yeah.
That kind of energy.
What's interesting about this record to me is like you all are describing like a back to basics approach and like familiar sounds, but it also sounds like it's from the future. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing traditional about it in some sense. And I've seen it referred to as like a post rap record.
Mhm.
So they somehow like found a way to make it sound like unique and new, even though they're using like some familiar sounds.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like how you do make stuff new and to the future you because you can't just invent it out of thin air. You have to like go
Yeah.
back to the drawing board and like right, understand how it works to then push it in a new direction, I think.
I feel
And
like
like
it carries like you say with the process, it's like a tone of familiarity. If even if you're
yeah,
not fully aware of it, it helps you digest it because part of you's already heard something made in the same way, or you know what I mean. Like
yeah,
it's not completely out there and completely like. I mean, it is completely out there, completely something new, but it's tied back to something which is been around for a while.
yeah. And that even goes back to the dream stuff we were talking about earlier, is like your dreams can't be just completely fully abstract. You wouldn't be able to process that. It's like it needs to feed you some of that
Yeah,
uncanny valley stuff where you're like, huh, something's not right here. That's
yeah,
you're
something's
like drawn
right but
in.
not right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you all discover Injury Reserve? When did you start listening to them?
I think it might have been Floss. I can't even remember who sent me them. I try to remember. It was, I want to say around maybe 2016 or 17. And there was a lot of kind of like glitchy noise rap stuff, like really sort of pushing the boat out kind of thing. So that was kind of in that. And I was so gutted. I missed a chance to see them play in Manchester.
Mm.
I can't remember why I didn't go. I think maybe I was tired, which is always a really bad idea to miss a show. You should just go. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, they started picking up, and then I think it was on the self-titled album when that came in 2019. I was like, this is one of my favorite albums of this year. And like that felt kind of like a hark back to groups like De La Soul, those perfect trios, and just coming up with really interesting song structures and new ideas. Um, but having that call back to the past. And then this record was such that I did not expect them to go in this direction, even though like they'd always been really progressive. And it felt like such a complete work. And that's even kind of reflected in the artwork as well, just having this like monochromatic cover that's just like, this is it, you know. Um, yeah. And I saw them live on the tour for this record in Leeds. And like even their lighting choice was so beautiful, just having this one hot tungsten light that just kind of like blasted out. So they were backlit, and then having the strobe. That was kind of, it's just such a singular idea that was so impactful. Like, because I'm a guy that kind of just like gets too overcomplicated, I think, a lot of the time. It's just sometimes having somebody that draws you back to simplicity is just kind of
Mm.
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's hard to be it's hard to be simple sometimes. It's hard to keep, space and weight. And I feel like sometimes it takes like a special, group like this or to remind you that, yeah, things can be, I'm not going to say linear, but like simple and still hit really fucking hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's such a like magic trick in my book, because I wasn't really familiar with them until they went on tour with Arm& Hammer, and
Mm.
I started listening to the record, and I went to the show. And at the show, I don't think Parker was there. I think it was just Richie, but it had a similar setup to what you're describing, Algernon. This
Mm.
that like that made it feel like much bigger
Yeah.
than I think it actually was. I mean, it was just one guy up there, but it was simple, but somehow led to this more like bigger sound and wider experience.
Yeah. Like even you were saying about making it feel big, and like the vocal production on this is so crazy. Like trying out all the different voices they were doing, and I was thinking like they use the switch up in the voice to like switch up the song and create like, oh, this is the next moment happening now. It's like sort of a arrangement or compositional technique through the
Like a
production of the voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes you think like, oh, it's not just like a producer and a couple of MCs. It's like there's a whole, I don't know what's happening, how many guys are in here. It's like I kind of felt that about the first time I heard Death Grips as well. I was like, I don't know how many people are involved here. It's like
Yeah.
I'm getting
Yeah.
thrown everywhere.
Could be one, could be 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're all saying this, but just this idea of being able to take, what was, sampled like, over and over and over again throughout like, different eras and periods of time, and doing it in a new way so it sounds fresh. I also feel that about like, the different sounds that I hear on here and the way that they're structured and just like the music elements that come together. I don't know if this is a sample or not, but the guitar riff on SS San Francisco, when I heard it for the first time, it sounds like right out of Nirvana's Playbook, right?
Mhm.
Like it sounds like something from that era, but it's new. I mean, obviously it's not something that they actually did, but like I love that. I love when artists can do things like that. It just really makes a project that much more special for me.
What if I don't wanna stay in here? If I don't wanna pray in here? What if I ain't doing it? What if if I really feel like that? If I won't wear some shit like that? No. We ain't supposed to be there. We ain't supposed to can't take it anymore. It ain't supposed to get messy. Not anymore. No. We ain't supposed to be there. We ain't supposed to live in it. It ain't supposed to get messy.
Made for yourself, so sad. Can't protect yourself. Don't be Stone hard to move 'em, wrong hard to prove.
Yeah. It's like, and I know what the sample is. And if you look online, it'll probably tell you what it is as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like giving it new life.
Yeah.
Because things like that, you always think, oh, this will. Sorry, a parakeet just landed on a tree opposite me. That distracted me there. We have parakeets in Manchester. It's really weird.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Escape
Um,
ones or whatever.
yeah, it's eating a nut with its foot. Beautiful. Um, the thing about yeah, it's giving a sample new life where you're like you make something you think, oh, that was only for now. It's like, no, it has a new life in the future and beyond. Like it'll just keep coming back and finding new
Yeah.
relevance. Actually, I'll try to remember what the first single off this was. I think it was Knees, I think. Is that right?
Wikipedia says it was Knees. Yeah.
Knees. Yeah, like there are several tracks on this where I will just bawl my eyes out, like crying to it. And like Knees was definitely one. I think it's hard to interpret a lot of the lyrics on this. Some of them are like I think quite esoteric, but like I think Richie said it was about like his the passing of his stepfather, I believe. And then obviously having Grog's death, like after that, it's kind of like, oh, this was an album about grief that then actually really it became grief. And yeah, the stuff in there about not getting any taller, I interpreted that as like that's what happens when you die. You stop growing. And the thought of that is quite morbid. Like I remember like I've been to funerals for friends before and like had thoughts of like, oh, I didn't realize that you were that tall when you see their coffin. And it's like that's when it really hits you the realness of it. Like just something as simple as somebody's height and they won't grow. So that kind of like hit me really hard. But yeah, that's it's such a beautiful track. Like the having yeah, just all the voices and the guitars like flying everywhere in this kind of airy, beautiful way.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely my favorite track.
Mm.
Definitely.
Does the sound feel really emotive for you as well? Does it take you to that place along with the lyrics?
Yeah, like it's a Black MIDI sample, right? Isn't it? It's like I think something off an early Black MIDI record, and it's just the way that it's kind of stuttered and staggered, and this kind of like that rhythm, and it's like the breathing as well. It's kind of like it feels like a big sigh almost in a way.
Mm.
Like I think there's definitely a lot of things on this record that feels like heavy breathing to me.
Yes. Yes. You can hear that's one of the things. I'm so glad you said that. That's one of the things I really love about this is that you can hear that throughout the album's entirety, like that heavy breathing in the background. And
Yeah,
sometimes it sounds and feels really subtle, and sometimes it's like in your ears. Like
yeah,
this is an album to listen to with headphones because you can hear all of those little elements. But I love that about this project.
yeah. It's kind of like I I don't know if I'm drawn to music that is kind of like other people would find really anxiety inducing, but I actually find that like bring my anxiety down. And like I was thinking about, I don't know if you heard of Gilla Band, like an Irish noise rock band. I think on their second album, the singer recorded himself having a panic attack and just like doing the breathing exercises. And it's just like it's so intense, but it's like if you're having a panic attack, it's like exposure therapy. Like go listen to it and you're like, all right, yeah, I'm back in the room again. And I kind of feel like maybe that's what's happening with this. It's like really subtle, kind of subliminal exposure therapy in a way.
Yeah, I'm very similar to you in that what people might find hard to listen to, I love. Like I
Mm.
embrace all of that.
Yeah. You just need to jump in the deep end, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and it can be an emotional process, but sometimes I feel like you just have to go there and you have to just let yourself
For
that
real.
kind of
Yeah.
music. Yeah,
The subtle aspect of this record, as far as like the emotion is concerned, is also kind of amazing to me because like we're saying, they're not really like lyrically not really sure all the time like what they're talking about, but there's something about how it's presented, whether it's like I don't know the melody and what's track two, Superman,
Mm.
Superman. That there's something about the melody in that like communicates a certain kind of feeling, and that's sprinkled throughout the record. Like
Yeah.
nothing necessarily emotive about the lyrics but somehow the way it's presented to us like really feels vulnerable.
Like Superman Bat is so crazy because you could do an acoustic cover of that. And I hate acoustic covers and they should be illegal. But it's like it's a testament to how good the melody is. It's like I imagine like Deftones doing it in a way, maybe that would be better.
Mm.
And again, like autotune done in a certain way, it portrays a vulnerability, I think, because you hear the way that it's trying to adjust to the voice and like push against it.
Algernon, do you feel like injury reserve has impacted your approach to music?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, everything always kind of, I'm always listening to everything, but this felt like a gear shift. I think like production wise, anyway. Like, it made me kind of want to move more into the future, I think.
It feels like a record that kind of like I was gonna say like might give you permission to like do non-traditional things. Not that
Mhm.
permission necessarily, but like here's a example of like how you can do things in a non-traditional way.
Yeah, I think you're always kind of looking for permission, even though you don't want to admit it. Like,
Yeah.
I think like this has probably happened to you as well. Like when you do something in a track and you're like, I'm not sure about that, and maybe that's a bit much.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, you'll hear somebody else do it, and you're like, should have done it.
Yeah. Should have done it. Should have been the one to do it. Yeah.
I'm glad you picked this album because I think if you are sort of, thinking about like, the ask of picking a hip hop album that's significant to you, and what that might look like, in terms of a discussion, this might not be the obvious choice. But I think like what you all are saying, like it's one that we should talk about because it's it's still within, hip hop. It's not necessarily what people might, immediately define in that way, but that's also a reminder that hip hop doesn't look or sound one way. It's in the same way it's like allows for discussions like this. It's sort of giving the green light in that way as well. So I just appreciate it.
Think, yeah. I was thinking like as well, like Smoke Don't Clear, like that almost sounds like a garage song. Or it could be a grime tune, like the tempo on that.
Yeah.
And I'm always kind of looking for those things where like an American artist has made something that could be a bridge over here, like culturally. I think because I feel like we're getting closer and closer to each other with the sort of stuff that's being made, I
Yeah, I
think.
agree.
And it's going back to what you say, like a record like this really like it forces the boundaries of hip hop out to meet it. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
they're not making any like attempts at an inroad. They're just creating art in the same, I suppose, format. And it really, yeah, it's important because it just pushes things. I feel like if we all had maybe it would be a bit more fruitful.
And I think too, like how else can we move forward if we don't do that? You know,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I
otherwise
mean,
we get stuck.
yeah,
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the death throes of a lot of really old institutional monstrosities at the moment. So it's like you have to throw yourself forward, like to
Yeah.
get things moving the way they need to be moving.
mhm.
Yeah. It's kind of the spirit of hip hop, that rebellion. Like to
Yeah,
not fit in this, one box.
yeah. It's like born out of fire. It's like it will continue moving through the fire.
Yep. Well, Algernon and Clyde, this has been a lovely conversation. We really appreciate y'all coming on to talk about this album and your new album, Stick a Fork in It, which is pretty incredible. Definitely, folks, if you've not heard it yet, please tap in. It's a really great album, and it's not like anything I've heard this year.
Mhm.
What makes it even better.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything that you want folks to know before we go, where they can get the album, where they can reach y'all on social media?
Definitely pay money for it on Bandcamp. Buy
Yeah,
all
yeah.
our
Buy
all our
it,
stuff. Give us money.
Buy the record.
Get those coins.
Fucking Bun Spotify, buy the record.
Hey, artists. All right, folks, this has been The Next Movement. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Breakfast for dummies, Kellogg's off a menu grubby. Colored fellow, friends yellow dressing, mellow belly. Uncle in waiting, swallowed over down, now I'm steady. He studied my stutters, now he's steady. Little brother heavy, Leo Messi. Squad goals over since Motorola flip phones. The pitfalls of being old enough to know how shit goes. Homes made out of stick stones, used to huff puff and get blown. Two wolves at the door of Rome. Tiff with the thing we alone now. Gotta get it on your own. I'm still here, but wondering if I'm a ninth like China. Baby boy, lucky number dozen. 1212. It was written, imagine that. Granddad mannerisms. Wonder what they gonna have. Do me a favor, don't let fear grab you like it have me. Caterpillar free. Time will flutter by like nothing. Like before you have a chance to know who you be. Time will flutter by, baby brother. You already know.